Good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are. Welcome to the DEFCON Warning System Digest. I am Thomas Lonely Wolf, the director of the DEFCON Warning System. As a reminder, please subscribe to us on YouTube, Podbean, iTunes, wherever you find us, and visit us on our website at defconwarningsystem.com. defconwarningsystem.com is where you will find our latest articles, announcements, and of course on Twitter, DEFCON WS Alerts. That's kind of a strange way, but if it was just DEFCON, we tried to get just DEFCON, but the DEFCON hacker group got it first. So DEFCON WS Alerts, that's where we tweet out breaking information, things like that. Also visit us on our website and join us on our community forum where you can actually interact with the DEFCON Warning System staff. That's the best place to do it. Twitter, we read the comments. We aren't able to really reply. Facebook, we read the comments. We aren't really able to reply. It's the community forum is a lot more controlled area for us. That's a lot better to interact with us. Okay, on to the digest. I know this one's a little late coming from part one. This is part two of the March update. There was a lot of information in March. A lot of stuff happened in April. It kept us very busy. But the information I'm going to be giving you is very valid today. So don't turn this off just because it's like 6 weeks old or whatever. This is still current information. That's kind of why I was a little late delivering this digest, because it was all just still so current. It was nothing that I had to get out before it was just over with, and it was nothing that you needed to worry about. So that's why we kind of took a little bit extra time working on what was going on with Korea and Venezuela and Russia and everything. I wanted to make sure that you had the update information, the up to the minute information. So this information is all still very current. So you're listening to us in your cars, you're listening to us in the computer in the background where you're watching Doctor Who. I've got Doctor Who in the background. Actually, I'm burning an episode to CD because it's on PBS, and so I'm bringing it to DVD, CD. So Doctor Who Battlestar Galactica, that's a better choice, but it's not playing anywhere right now. So, okay, here we are. DEFCON Warning System Digest Part 2. Part 1 talked an awful lot about North Korea. North Korea is still in the news. We have more information we're giving to you about North Korea. That's going to be in another digest, or again, go to our website and view our updates. Updates, in case you're just joining us, I promise I'll get to the information. You'll learn that if you're new here, I tend to ramble and babble and go off on little tangents. But the updates are designed to be very quick reads. They're designed to be just get in, get out, 3 minutes, 5 minutes. If you listen to the updates over the podcast, they're designed to be just very quick, just hit you with the headlines and move on and get on with your life. The digests are designed to give you more in-depth information, let you know why we came to the conclusions, why this is important information you need to know, and more details so you can make informed decisions. In case I hear that little meow, that's my kitty in the background. Her name is Neve. Okay, so the digest part 2. Following the United States, Russia has pulled out of the INF Treaty, the Intermediate Range Nuclear Forces Treaty. These, as I've said in digests in the past, the reason this treaty is so important is because these medium-range missiles, they are indistinguishable from long-range ballistic missiles at the start. You kind of don't know what they're going to be doing, where they're going to be going, and the chance of triggering an escalated response is a lot higher than if you just fire off a short-range missile. For a short-range missile, they're small, they're quick, they're in the sky, and then they're on the ground before you really have a chance to do anything about it. You got just a couple of minutes for the Iron Dome or the Patriot missile to shoot them down. These medium-range missiles, they have a lot longer range, but like I said, it's really difficult to tell what they're going to be targeting until they start making their longer flight paths, their arcs, and things like that. So nobody really knows if this is going to, just go 1,000 miles or so, or 1,000 miles, or is this going to be going, over the poles and nuking the mother country, and now we're really got into a full-scale escalation, full-scale nuclear war. That's the danger of these missiles, and that's why there was such a hoopla over the United States pulling out of the INF Treaty, because they said, well, now that everybody's going to start building these intermediate range missiles, and when they get fired off, nobody's really going to know what's going on, and so they're going to have to react as if it is an assault on the mother country. Therefore, the mother country is going to have to respond with a full retaliatory strike. So that's why these missiles are considered to be so dangerous. So the United States is pulled out of the treaty, and the reason they did that is because they claim that Russia has been violating the treaty with these missiles and launchers that they've been building, and Russia kind of plays the legal lawyer ball with it, saying these are only meant for short range or different type of missiles, and the United States comes back and says, yeah, you may be building it for these legal allowed missiles, but the problem is they have the capability of launching these intermediate range ballistic missiles. They have the capability of being these intermediate range ballistic missiles. Therefore, you're in violation of the treaty. It's kind of like saying, in a lot of cities in the United States, they say that guns are only allowed to have so many bullets in their clips. So they're limited to like 8, 6, 8, 10 bullets. Let's say 10 bullets. Well, the gun is designed to hold 50 bullets, but we're only going to put 10 bullets in there. Therefore, we're still compliant with the law. That's what Russia is doing. They built these things that are capable of violating the treaty, but they say they're not going to do that. And the United States just looked up and said, "You got to be joking." So the United States said, "You guys are violating the spirit of the treaty. We're going to pull out of the treaty." And so Russia has turned around and they've now done the same thing. The United States is Russia has pulled out of the treaty as well, which is kind of no big difference because they've kind of not been following the treaty anyway. And this has been going on for years and years. And now the United States has just finally had enough, and they've officially now pulled out of it. Russia, for its part, said the United States is violating the treaty itself. So, everybody's blaming everybody else, but all we have, bottom line, is that now everybody is officially out of the INF treaty. There's talk about renegotiating it. They want to bring China into it. China has kind of said they're not going to. In fact, let's talk about that right now. China, for its part, has refused to join in any INF treaty. So one of the big criticisms of this treaty is that even if it was in force, yes, it limits the United States, limits Russia. China's got no limits. They're just building their nuclear stockpile willy-nilly. And so now China will have this arsenal of medium-range ballistic missiles, and the United States has no way to respond because they've been limited to this treaty. Therefore, they haven't built anything up. Now, of course, the United States can respond, because if China launches a medium-range missile and it hits the United States or hits U.S. forces, the United States has a whole lot of long-range ballistic missiles that they can do something with. But that's kind of not what they want to do, because one of the nice things about these intermediate range missiles is because they have shorter reaction time. You can get them closer, you can fire them off, and the enemy doesn't have a whole lot of reaction time. It's the same thing with short-range missiles with nuclear warheads. You can fire a short-range missile off at the enemy, and before they can go, they're vapor. The reason that we have relied on intercontinental long-range ballistic missiles is because they have a response time. You know they're coming. You have a chance to respond. And so that's where the mutually assured destruction comes in. Russia didn't want their forces blasted off the face of the earth before they had a chance to fire all the missiles at the United States. The United States, for its part, didn't want their ICBMs sitting in the ground while their cities and their ICBMs were getting nuked. So that's one of the reasons why they wanted to get rid of these medium-range missiles. The medium-range missiles just cut down the reaction time. So I am not personally comfortable with the idea of knowing that my Russian counterpart or China counterpart or my enemy counterpart is going to be vaporized along with me. I kind of want to know that they're going to be vaporized while I'm sitting at home drinking some A&W root beer. I don't drink, so A&W root beer. So, I'm kind of like on the side of, I just don't want to die with my enemy. I want my enemy to die while I'm okay. And therefore, that gives the enemy a whole lot of incentive not to bug me. So again, I digressed a little bit into missile defense, but going back to the medium-range missiles, again, this is why it's such a big bugaboo, and this is why everybody's kind of now looking at China going, why don't you want to join in on this? Well, China, being China, they've got like a lot of money and debt that they own, and they got a really big, military force, and they've kind of got this now attitude that nobody can do anything to us. So what are you going to do about it? So they're not joining in. So that's what's going on right now. China is not joining in on any INF negotiations. The United States is now turning to China to try and get them on board, and so far they're just saying no. So that's kind of where we're at. The United States is probably not going to want to negotiate an INF treaty with Russia as long as China is not on board, because China is now a looming threat militarily. Not yet in as far as a direct threat to the United States, but give it 10 years or so, and we're going to be now talking a different game with China, the way they're building up their military. Now, although China has expressed a no first use policy regarding nuclear weapons, that has long been their position. They say they have no intention of using their nuclear weapons unless they are nuked first. The DEFCON warning system does not believe that any no first use policy is valid, and that any country will use their nuclear arsenal if it will give them a strategic advantage under the right condition. This we have said with Russia, and this we are saying with now China. It's going to be a use them or lose them, and if a country is backed into a corner, they're not going to surrender their country without using whatever force is necessary to protect themselves. Russia, if the United States is marching on Moscow with their conventional forces, you bet they're going to throw some tactical nuclear weapons at them. The same thing with China. Now, they've got a whole mess of cannon fodder to throw in front of any conventional force. That's what the People's Liberation Army is. It's just, 1 million men who are just there to take bullets. But if the United States is able to slice through that sea of people and start marching on Beijing and start threatening to take over the country, to rout the country, to take over the Communist Party, well, you can bet China is going to start lobbing some nuclear weapons at them. You can bet on that. China is not going to sit there and take it and let their country be conquered. It's not going to happen. Same thing with Russia, and it's the same thing with the United States. Of course, the United States doesn't have a no first use policy, so we didn't even need to get to them. The United States has pretty much just said, you threaten our country, we're going to vaporize you. Of course, the United States has the advantage of having these two huge oceans on either side, so it's kind of hard to take over the United States, unless you want to do the Red Dawn thing and, come over the Arctic, through Alaska, down through Canada, and the Canadians might have a little something to say about that. And, they also sent people up through Mexico, through Cuba, and through passing. Come on, you guys, anyone who follows DEFCON warning system knows the Red Dawn scenario, so I'm not going to go deeply into that. But let's just say that the United States is really hard to conquer. England found that out. China, on the other hand, well, they've got a whole lot of landmass to their west, and the United States has an awful lot of people over there, plus also, Hawaii, the Virgin Islands, and all sorts of these bases around there. So they do feel a little more threatened, especially since the United States has a tendency to reach out a lot. Some would say being where the United States really shouldn't be involved. We're not going to get into that. That's a question of politics and morality. That's not what we do. We're just analyzing the situation. And the fact that the United States is involved in Ukraine and the Middle East and South China Sea, and just it kind of irritates a lot of people who think the United States shouldn't be there and in their backyards. So this raises the possibility of conflict. So that's something we kind of have to be part of our analysis. So again, China, their no first use policy is a bunch of Feldercarb, Battlestar Galactica word. Of important note regarding Russia, Russia says it will respond to any U.S. deployment of short or intermediate range nuclear weapons in Europe by targeting not only the countries where they are stationed, but the United States as well. Well, this is not really a new development. If you put missiles someplace, the enemy is going to target it. This statement was made in order to frighten countries out of hosting U.S. missile batteries. And this is kind of talking about Poland and Ukraine and possibly Turkey. Russia is really trying to make inroads in Turkey. Turkey, not the most reliable NATO member, but all these countries that surrounded the old Soviet Union, the NATO countries, well, now they're telling them to kind of don't accept these missiles. Now the NATO countries have them. Some of the newer countries don't have them yet. They're kind of wanting them because they're a little nervous about Russia and their expansionist maneuvers lately, swallowing up parts of Georgia, swallowing up part of Ukraine. They're wondering now, when is Russia going to start, eyeing them, especially because either they were former Soviet bloc countries or they're in the Russian sphere of influence. Therefore, Russia believes that they should have claim to those countries economically or whatever. The United States shouldn't be there. So they're all nervous about what Russia's been doing lately. So they've been asking the United States to, put these missile batteries there. And so Russia's now threatening them. Well, like I said, you put a missile battery there, you're going to be a target. And this statement about, and threatening not only where the country is stationed, but the United States as well, that kind of, if these NATO countries start lobbing missiles at Russia, of course Russia is going to respond against the United States. So this is not a surprising threat or a new threat. It's just something they just wanted to throw out there. But so that's what's going on. That's the latest Russian threat to try and keep these missiles out of there. And like I said, I'd much rather know that my enemy is going to be turned into toast while I'm sitting here sipping some Hawaiian Punch, my favorite drink. So Iran, let's pivot over to Iran for a moment. So you notice I'm kind of talking really fast because I normally talk really fast, but also I don't want to make these digests too long. Nobody wants to sit here and listen to an hour and a half lecture on the world situation. I know you just kind of want to get in, get the details, and get out. So that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to be more responsive to, because I certainly don't like listening to really long lectures either. So Iran now claims it has the ability to produce a nuclear weapon. Surprise, surprise. But also claims it has no interest in doing so. Baloney! A long time ago, many years ago, and by many years I mean like about 7, Iranian rebel forces reported that Iran has acquired the ability to produce a nuclear weapon. Now, you're always kind of wondering, how true are these statements? How true are these, leaks that are coming out? And it's true that rebel forces do kind of have a bone to pick with Iran. So you're kind of wondering how true this information is. Maybe telling the United States, hey, Iran's got the ability to produce nuclear weapons. Maybe you should do something about it, like invade. The problem is, this rebel group has given good intel before. They're the ones who blew the lid on Iran's nuclear program in the first place. They're the ones who said, hey, Iran has these secret facilities where they're developing nuclear weapons. And lo and behold, there were these secret facilities. They were found. They're the ones that are now being inspected by the Atomic Energy Commission under this nuclear pact. So they've given good intel before. So this same group came up and said Iran has nuclear weapons. They said this years ago. We, the DEFCON warning system, long believe that Iran has the ability to produce nuclear weapons. Now, how good they are, we don't know. Who cares how good they are? If they blow up, that's all that matters. If they blow up off target, who cares? The fact that they can do it means that next time they can do it better. This is the same thing we've said about North Korea. We said this years ago. And I'm patting myself on the back. I promise I'll stop. But Iran has also claimed that they have no interest in doing so. And they gave this BS argument about, it's the Quran does not permit weapons of mass destruction because it's a sin or something like that. I don't remember. I'm sure somebody's going to look it up and tell me exactly what the Quran says, or they may even tell me that I'm kind of wrong on this part. But the thing is, Iran is flat out lying. Of course they have interest in doing it. That's because they were doing it before. They were doing it before they got caught. And now the United States made this, nuclear deal with them so they wouldn't do it, but they will do it in 10 years when the sunset clause kicks in, when the deal sunset, and they have now the blessing of the international community because that was part of the nuclear deal. So of course they have an interest in doing so. And in fact, they'd be nuts not to, because Iran doesn't have a whole lot of friends in the area. They have Saudi Arabia right there, and Iran and Saudi Arabia don't really get along, and Iran's going to want something to defend themselves if Saudi Arabia ever decides to do something. Saudi Arabia has kind of expressed interest in nuclear weapons too. In fact, they've expressed interest in nuclear weapons because Iran has expressed interest in nuclear weapons. Before Iran ever got into the nuclear program, Saudi Arabia was kind of okay with the status quo. Now they've expressed interest in it. Pakistan's got nuclear weapons, although Iran and Pakistan, aren't they kind of getting along? I kind of can't remember. I think they do. Again, somebody's going to correct me and they're going to say, "Why don't you know this?" Well, sometimes I forget stuff, and when the issue comes to a head, I'll remind myself. So give me a break. But Iran, like I said, they kind of have a reason why they want to invest in nuclear weapons, especially because the United States kind of has their own nuclear weapons. And since the United States and Iran kind of don't get along together very well together at the Thanksgiving table, they'd kind of be foolish not to want nuclear weapons, especially since Israel has nuclear weapons. Although Israel has shown remarkable restraint about not using them, Iran will not show that same kind of restraint, especially because their religious beliefs has a different moral code on them, and they're more than happy to use those weapons against their enemies and to, kind of usher in the 12th Imam, and that's for another digest. Actually, maybe that's kind of for this digest because it kind of goes into what their thinking is, but not for this particular. Yeah, actually it does. So let me just say that some parts of the Muslim religion, Armageddon, there were 11 imams in the past. The 12th imam will usher in Armageddon and the return of Muhammad, and kind of all this is kind of based on Jewish teachings and Christian teachings, because Muhammad was a student of the Catholic religion. That's kind of where he got all this information from. So Iran doomsdayers, they kind of, want to start the war in order to get Armageddon going. So, hey, a nuclear weapon, those will certainly help speed things up. So moving on. Additionally, Iran has unveiled a domestically produced submarine capable of firing cruise missiles and has, for the first time, launched a cruise missile from a submarine. So Iran continues to build up their military forces. The big deal is their ability to control, for a short while anyway, the Strait of Hormuz, where I mispronounced it, didn't I? Where a lot of the oil comes from. And that, of course, is a really big flashpoint because the world still heavily relies on oil. The United States still imports a lot of oil. I don't know why, but they do. And so if the oil stops coming from the Middle East, that's going to cripple the United States very, very badly. So they have a great deal of interest of keeping the Strait of Hormuz open. Iran does not have the ability to keep the strait closed. See, I'm going to stop pronouncing it because I'm just not getting it right. They don't have the ability to keep the strait closed for very long, but they do have the ability to disrupt it. That's where the problem comes in. So that's why you kind of want to keep an eye on how well developed Iranian military is. The more they develop their military, the more credible the threat becomes, and the longer they can keep it closed, and the more they can hold it hostage, because the day is going to come where Iran says, now we have the ability to close the strait, give us what we want, or we're going to do it. Now, the United States is going to say no, and Iran is going to start sinking American vessels. Now, that's going to be the end of Iran. At least their military. It's going to be the end of their military, but the fact that they can do it for a short while and no military expert disputes this is going to cause chaos. So keep an eye on the Iranian military as far as that, and as far as their ability to just cause trouble in the area. Although they do have a tendency to work through their proxies because they don't want any retaliation on Iran itself. So that's why they always work through their terrorist proxies. And you're going to see more of that. Europe and the United States are split on their approach to Iran, with the United States moving toward a more hardline stance. Now, we've seen this again and again. Europe, very pacifist, very appeasing. They don't want to cause any trouble. They just want everyone to get along and sing Kumbaya. That's a really great thing. The problem is that's not how the world works. And Europe, probably being tired of 2 world wars, they kind of don't want another one. So they're kind of bending over backwards, trying to appease and appease and appease. The United States, on the other hand, they've gone really hardline with their foreign policy. Oh my gosh. So they're split on their approach to Iran. Of course, Europe makes a lot of money off Iran with trade and stuff like that, so they don't want to see that drying up either. So they've got their own selfish incentive to keep working with Iran. And, well, that's just too bad for Israel. That's too bad for the United States. That's just too bad for everybody when Iran gets enough money to close the Strait of Hormuz. Did I pronounce it right? So Europe is basically not working with the United States on trying to control Iran, and this is going to come back and bite them because Europe is a lot closer to Iran than the United States is. Good grief. So this wedge, unfortunately, is an advantage to Iran as it sees an exploitable fracture as it continues to pursue its nuclear goals. So there we are. They've got the UN fooled because the UN is not inspecting secret bases that they don't know about. And you know very well Iran's got those secret bases going. Europe has no interest in curtailing Iran because they're a bunch of appeasers. Sorry if you're from Europe, but that's what's going on. And they also don't want to lose the money that they're making off of Iran. And the United States is pretty much going at it alone. And we've seen with Cuba, when the United States goes at it alone, it really just doesn't work out. Cuba would not be a communist state if Europe and the world would have got behind the United States and just enforced a trade embargo. But they didn't want to do that. So Cuba is now still a mess, and Iran is just going to continue doing what they are doing because they have no incentive to stop because they're just still making enough money. Now, the United States just put some new sanctions on there, and Europe is kind of fighting those. We'll see how all that shakes out, but the United States is really kind of putting the screws to Iran again. And again, it's going to take some time to see what happens with the sanctions and what Europe is going to do about it. Meanwhile, Britain and the European Union have no plans to abandon the Iran nuclear deal. Again, I was just talking about this, continuing trade with Iran as well as establishing routes to evade U.S. sanctions on dealings with Iran. So, not only are they not working with the United States on trying to curtail Iran's nuclear program and their military terrorism, but they're actually sabotaging it. Britain isn't as bad as the European Union, but Britain and the United States have better relations. But this is, sometimes you just want to reach out and strangle some people. But I don't know what the logic is behind it other than appeasement, and they want to continue making money. But that's what's going on. So, like I said, we're not going to see any real change in Iran. Iran right now is scrambling real hard to keep Europe from enforcing the sanctions that the United States has imposed. We'll see how all that shakes out. Iran has also announced the construction of 2 new nuclear plants with the help of Russia. Well, golly gee. Now, these nuclear plants are supposed to be for medical research and peaceful energy, and all that's a bunch of baloney. Yes, it will be used for medical research. Yes, it will be used for peaceful energy, and they're taking the technology that they're learning from it and applying it to their nuclear weapons program. Now, they are supposed to be taking spent uranium and it's supposed to be reprocessed out the country, and that is supposed to be going on. How well that's being tracked and how well it's being reported, your guess is as good as mine. The United Nations says Iran is in compliance with the nuclear deal, although recently Iran has said that they're going to start considering reprocessing uranium to a higher level, and they're considering pulling out of the nuclear deal completely because of the sanctions that the United States put on. Well, I think pretty much they haven't been following it anyway. So Iran is going to be a problem in the future. And I'm going to tell you this, that Iran is probably going to be starting a Mideast war on Israel and drag Russia into it as well. Now, that's a biblical prediction. When that happens, I don't know, but just seeing what's going on domestically. Okay, I'm using that word wrong. So let me change that. What's going on over there? We can see just coming out of that, Iran constantly makes threats against Israel. You're not going to make those kind of threats and just not act on it. Their proxies certainly have been following through on it, and it's just going to be a matter of time before Israel reacts, and they're just going to go at each other. That's just simply because that's what happens in these situations, especially in the Middle East. So we're going to be looking at another Middle East war. Kind of came close to it recently, but look for that. And as far as nuclear war related, you kind of want to see how Russia gets involved in there. Russia doesn't have to be involved because all Israel has to be is overwhelmed, and they're going to let loose their nukes. Iran just may decide that they want to preemptively strike Israel with nuclear weapons. There's this great YouTube video. I think we have it listed on the DEFCON Warning System YouTube channel. one of our favorite videos. I can't remember how YouTube works, but if you just it is in our recommended videos. But if you don't want to look that up, it's called "What Will the First Few Minutes of World War III Look Like?" It's based on a surprise Iranian nuclear attack on Israel. It's 4 minutes and 57 seconds. It's a very good video. I recommend everybody watch this. It's very, very horrifying. So that is our digest for this week. We have more digests coming out. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel or subscribe to our Podbean podcast or our iTunes. This is how we know that you're following us and listening to us. The more we listen to, the more we know that you want this, and the more we'll continue to put them out as time allows us. But we're going to do our best. I'm going to do my best to get another one out in about a week and a half, because we got a lot more stuff we need to cover, but nobody wants to listen to an hour podcast on how we're all doomed. So I'm going to try and keep these to about a half an hour. So my name is Thomas Lonely Wolf. I'm the director of the DEFCON Warning System. Please, again, visit us on our website, defconwarningsystem.com. Follow us on Twitter, DEFCON WS Alerts. Thank you very much.